Hello, Smita, are you there?
Hi, Bede, I'm right here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was I wanted to go, we're still continuing this whole theme of what suffering or what our unhappiness actually is, because it's important to understand what we're dealing with. Because if we go by experience, emotional pain or human misery can seem very overwhelming. It can seem like it's set in concrete, and we take it as an experience, and that's how we understand it as its experience. We're not going to go very far in resolving it. So what I want to do is examine what we mean by the experience of human misery. Okay, that's what we're going to be discussing.
That's a lovely topic because it's a common problem with everybody. So, I mean, to understand the experience of misery and pain, I think it would be a tremendous help to everybody, It's a good topic to discuss on.
Yes, you're right. It's a very relevant human topic. Now I want to go back to the example of the snake and the rope. Now, remember, there's a story that it's a somewhat dark evening, and because there's darkness, there's a possibility of making a mistake. If there's a rope coiled up in the corner, you can actually take it to be a snake. Okay, if you're from New Zealand like me, you never would, because we don't have snakes, but we've certainly got snakes over here, I found. So what happens is that because it's dark, instead of actually seeing what's there, which is a rope, we have an experience that what we're taking to be true is that in the corner there is a snake. Now, so this, even though this is an assumption of mine, I'm not experiencing it as an assumption. I have no knowledge that it is derived from a notion. As far as I am concerned, the experience is I am looking at a snake. And it's not just simply doesn't exist in one little part of my head, this way of looking. It involves me totally as a psychophysical entity, as the mind-sense-body complex. In other words, I'm looking at the snake and I'm having thoughts like, oh my goodness, I've got to get out of here real fast. I'm having those kind of thoughts. I can't help but have thoughts like that, because the rule is that my thinking will conform to my way of seeing. And what about what do you think is going to be happening to my feelings?
Well, the fear factor is so prevalent that you don't go beyond that. You're so fearful of the snake. So that impacts your mind to a great degree that you don't think of anything beyond that.
Yeah, you're going to be afraid. So what you're going to be is, as an individual, you're going to be full of fear.
Yeah,
you're looking at the snake. So you're having thoughts that are conforming you're having thoughts that are conforming to your way of seeing. You're having feelings that are conforming to the way of seeing. You're having physiological reactions, like your breathing will be sort of maybe going up faster. The adrenaline is pumping into your body, and you have a tremendous urge to act. In other words, get out of there. So we're not talking about, so the way of seeing is not separate from the way I am as an individual in my totality.
Okay. So how could you synchronize both the thought of the fear prevalent and what you are, I am? So how do you get into the same platform?
So I didn't hear you. What did you say?
I'm saying, like, the fear is so prevalent in you, so you don't think beyond that. And if you say that I am has nothing to do with the fear factor, so how do we equate both of these statements?
You see, what it is that as I see I be, that is an epistemological rule. It's a knowledge rule. The way I actually see things is the way I be. So the thing is that, but we feel that if I was to talk to you, I would say, I'm just so afraid and I'm so upset, you know, I've got negative thinking or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is, if I am seeing a snake, I cannot help but feel, think, have physiological reactions and wishing to act. Because the thing is, my seeing is my way of being in the world as an individual. Now, we are now talking about, though, we're talking about a snake, which is over there as an object. What people don't realize is, have you ever heard people use the expression, I just want to feel good about myself?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, many times.
Now, I want to examine that. I want to examine what they mean by that. You see, they think that because they want to feel good about themselves because they feel bad about themselves. But what I want to do is examine what they mean by when I say I feel bad about myself. In other words, what's happened is if someone was describing to you how they're feeling bad about them, they will give you a description of the person that they think they are. They're actually making themselves as an object that they can look at and examine, and they can go, that's me and I just hate myself. But they're not aware that they're doing that, because you see, if I'm looking at an object over there that's got characteristics that I can describe, like I'm a loser, I'm no good, I'm ugly, or whatever it is that people's favoured forms of misery, what happens is that they're looking at themselves in a certain way. They don't know that they're looking at themselves in a certain way because they're experiencing, just like the snake. You see, what they've done is they've taken themselves to be what they are describing, and then they become that description. Are you with me? So they're not actually, the very fact that I can look at a description of myself means that I am not that. However, the experience is I am that. So I've got a judgment. I am a loser. Now, I'm not aware that I have a judgment, I am a loser, or I am unloved, or I am stupid, or I am bad, or I am weak, or I am inferior and deficient, I am unapproved of, I'm not popular enough, or whatever it is. I'm not aware that these are notional, just like the snake. It's a notion, isn't it? The snake exists, and because I see the snake, it's there. That's what Swami Dayananda means by subjective. Because I see it, it is there. But it doesn't exist in reality. So the same way, when I'm looking at myself, in the same way, I'm experiencing myself as a certain type of person. And because I'm experiencing myself as a certain type of person, especially, and it's because I'm seeing myself, as an individual, I become that way of seeing. Just like this thing. So in my individual totality, as an individual, if I have the notion, I am unhappy, or that's the common notion, but it has the form of I'm a loser, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm old, I'm no good, or whatever it is. I'm not good looking, or whatever it is. What happens is all of me feels it. So, you see, when I have got the notion if I'm a loser, I'm going to have thoughts in my head going, oh my goodness, I just wish I could, So my thoughts are conforming to that way of seeing. They can't help but conform to that way of seeing. And I'm also having feelings of depressed and life is not really worth living, really. There's nothing I can do, and the world seems so big, and the feelings, and the pain as an experience is very real. We don't deny experience. We're just trying to understand experience of Vedanta. We don't deny it. And the physiological, I won't really have much energy because I'm such a loser, and I won't really do much. So what I'm saying here is that this idea of myself that I take to be me is called self-objectification. In other words, I make myself into a thing that I can describe. And then I take myself to be it, but the whole process is unconscious. The whole process is unconscious. Now all of these very painful self-judgments that have turned into an experience of myself, just like the judgment there's a snake has turned into the experience of a snake, produces a tremendous sense of self-dissatisfaction, an unhappiness. I feel bad about myself. Now, it doesn't stop there though. Because I feel bad about myself, I now have an incredibly strong desire to feel good about myself. It's like a pressure. If I am unloved, if that's what I feel I am, if I feel that's me, yep, that's me, I'm the unloved person, I will then have a tremendous, or unapproved of person, I will then have a tremendous desire and drive to get love and approval. And Swami Dayananda calls it a binding desire because it binds me. It makes me act in certain ways. Because of the pain, I have this strong intensity to get love and approval. Now, of course, when I relate to other people, I can't be loud about this. I can't go up to people and say, excuse me, I need love and approval. That isn't very acceptable. Even though this might be true about me in terms of my experience, I've got to get practiced, and I've got to work out good ways to get it. Some people, unfortunately, they're called socially dysfunctional. They haven't got the skills to get the social approval that they think that they need. There are some people who have adapted to this culture of ours, right? And they can. They're good at what we call social performance, but the basis of it is, when you're looking at human beings, the three main areas where we feel we can become good, so we can feel good about ourselves, and the pressure is on, is that people, we can get this from people. We can get this love and approval from people. And then we set about going that way. And it doesn't matter what we say. If you hear people say, I don't care about approval, I just accept myself. You heard that? People asserting themselves like that? That is a defense against knowing the fact that they suffer from this, actually. So it is universal, this desire for approval and love. Now, the second thing that our culture provides is that if I can accumulate enough physical possessions, then I will feel good about myself. So here's another promise. Besides that love and approval is going to give it to me, and it's going to make me feel good about myself, and the pressure to it, I've got a pressure for physical possessions in order to make me feel good about myself. Now, Swami Dayananda said, there's a big difference between me wanting to buy a car and then wanting to buy a car so I can feel good about myself. There are two different things. So we're not talking about desire. We're talking about a binding desire is born out of psychological suffering. Right. That's why it's binding, and that's why it has force. That's why the only way we can neutralize them is actually by becoming happier, actually. But we'll go into that in a minute. Now, second thing, the third one is, besides love and approval and physical possessions, there's one that is all over the place, and that is, I feel insignificant, unimportant, and deficient in some way. So what happens is I have this incredibly strong desire to become important. to become significant, to become somebody that can be looked up to in terms of power, status, or fame. Again, this is not something that's, even though it's universally exists within the human psychology, it is universally denied as well. Imagine, what do you think would happen if I went into a room and says, excuse me guys, what I'm really interested in is fame and glory.
So basically, we're always seeking happiness from external sources, you know, and you feel incomplete and inadequate with whatever you have. So therefore, you're constantly in search for external things which give you happiness.
That's exactly right. Because what happens is we feel deficient. And it's because of this deficiency, this feeling of self-dissatisfaction, we have this tremendous pressure. That's what I want to really get clear, that the reason that a lot of this psychotherapy and psychological counseling and stuff, what it does is it might teach you to get more forms of approval. It might even teach you to become more motivated to get new badges of status or something like that. But it fundamentally doesn't deal with the misery that we're caught in, that the condition we're caught in. And so therefore the pressure is always there. So what it is determining how we relate to other people, because other people are going to give it to me or they're going to refuse me. So I gotta deal with these people. And the other thing in our culture, particularly in the Western culture, there's a feeling of emptiness or boredom. And so the only thing that can really do so, because when we're so riddled with pain, emotional pain, we don't really feel alive. We don't know what it's to be alive. We feel empty of life. So there's a tremendous craving for stimulation. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's in the form of entertainment or whatever it is, booze, woman, whatever. And the thing is that these four areas, love and approval, material possessions, fame, significance, importance, and exciting experiences, are what our life, to obtaining these things in order to feel happy, to gain relief from this pain, tends to be what is what our human life is built around, consciously or unconsciously. And this particular misery that we have, which, as I said to you, is notional, it doesn't feel notional. The experience is not notional. The experience of feeling deficient, unloved, unimportant, a loser in terms of not enough, that is universal.
Yes.
Now here's the situation. So we swing between I'm feeling bad about myself, I'm now feeling good about myself. So what happens is someone says to you, oh, you're actually, I find that you're quite a wonderful person. Oh, really? You do? What happens is, sorry?
We tend to believe the negative, we don't take the positive things which people talk about us. We tend to, go by what is, what they negatively express.
Yes, we believe in the primary pain, but we are gratified by the opposite. You see, because anything about ourselves, any positive statement that anyone can make about myself is actually incorrect. It's not true. So you see, the idea that, someone says, oh, you're a nice person. Well, what does that mean, really? I'm a nice person. Like, what that means is culturally there's an idea of what a nice person is, right? And a nice person is very, very acceptable. And then someone says you're a nice person, and suddenly my ego balloon, myself, I'm blown up. I'm now inflated. I now have an inflated notion of myself. Ooh, I'm now a nice person, right? As opposed to I'm no good. You see, but they're both notions. We get seduced by the promise of the positive. And there is no positive self-notion that's correct. They're both fictions. And the only reason that fiction is so important to us is to the degree that we experience the pain of self-deficiency is the degree we desire to have the fullness of self-sufficiency. We want to become a better notion. We don't want to become a better person. We want to become a better notion of ourselves. So we take ourselves to be no good. Now we want to take ourselves to be something that is good. Notice that I'm saying I want to become something that is good. Something. Now, it's a very interesting thing that sometimes when we're walking by ourselves out in nature or whatever, suddenly we find ourselves not feeling good about ourselves, this self that we take ourselves to be, positive or negative. We just simply find ourselves being a non-demanding self. We find ourselves simply being ourselves in relation to what is there, to what is. And those self-notions, those self-judgments of feeling bad about myself or feeling good about myself disappear. They're suspended. And we find ourselves in an entirely different relation to life in that moment. We're actually free from the burden of the suffering. Now, that's a very, very interesting thing, because what's happened is, instead of being full of a notion of myself, positive or negative, I'm such a fantastic, marvelous guy and I just enjoy being me. You know, like the religion of meism is a big thing, you know, like you see these young kids, oh yes, you know, all of that sort of, you see that sort of carry on. So the thing is that it's not a high and it's not a low, but it's very, very meaningful. And it happens when, so instead of being full of notions of myself, I'm simply being myself. Now that's a very interesting thing. And not only that, in my mind, instead of being full of notions of myself and the experience of myself that goes with that notion, because I'm not aware of the notion, I'm just aware of the experience of myself, which is painful, my mind opens up. And in my mind are full of trees, of birds, listening to birds, of sights, of maybe the sensation of walking, very, very simple sensation. So my mind is simply full of what is. It's full of objects. It's objective. It's full of objects. It's not full of me, as I normally take myself to be. Now, the most important thing, one of the most important concepts of Vedanta is this. When Swami Dayananda talks about objectivity, he's not talking about something, oh yes, I'm objective, because that's just another one of those notions. He's talking about you simply being alive to facts by being yourself. That's how he puts it. And so what happens is, being objective means, relatively speaking, being happy. It means being myself, it means being happy, and it means being alive to facts. Now, this is an incredibly important idea and fact, because unless the pain is removed, the desires can't be neutralized, because the desires are there to try and to get something in order to get rid of my pain. So I can do whatever I like. I can try meditation, I can try nice experiences, I can try and have another relationship, whatever I want. That will not bring me to a relation to what is happening that is objective. And also objectivity is a rare thing. It's not normal. not when we're caught up in this process of becoming, from feeling bad about myself and trying to feel good about myself. But objectivity is the first step in Vedanta to be able to understand what the total vision means. It's the first step, and we can't bypass it. And the thing is that without objectivity, we're not really seeing what is. Now, what Swami Dayananda says is, you know how when I'm seeing myself as a loser, because I'm seeing myself that way, therefore it's true, therefore it is. That's what he says subjectivity is. Because I see it, it's there. Objectivity is because it's there, I see it. And
have a we have a mindset, like it's a prior orientation of, like being very subjective, and you don't, how does one imbibe the objectivity in one's life, like to become alive to what is. Could you expand that a bit more, like...
Okay, that's a very good point. The fact of the matter is we're enclosed in a subjectivity that feels very objective, and we're actually unconscious of that. That's the fact. We're actually, this is what we mean by the unconscious in Vedanta. We're living out, we're dramatizing daily, moment by moment, a subjectivity, which is a movement from a negative sense of ourselves to a positive sense of ourselves. And we're caught in this wheel that goes around and around called samsara. Now, the question you bring up is, well, how do we go about being objective? Now, that is a very interesting question, because fundamentally, unless we discover that practically, we can't relieve ourselves of the pain, and then we can't neutralize the desires. And this is the whole point of what we call karma yoga, which is a shifting from the practice of shifting from subjectivity to objectivity, right now, right where I am, as I am. You see, life is, sometimes people think that they think about themselves like, oh, one day I'm going to improve, maybe I'll get the spiritual understanding eventually in the future. I hope that's going to happen, right? That's not possible, because that's creating another picture in my mind about a self that's going to do it. You see, my actual life happens to me just like, like in an hourglass, doesn't it? Moment by moment. So if there's any transformation that is to happen, if there's any happiness that is to be discovered, it has to be discovered right now, right where I am, as I am, because that is my life. The thoughts I have about my life when I look at my life, and I go, and I look at my life and I look at my past and I go, oh, that wasn't very good, oh, that was pretty bad, oh my goodness. I hope no one ever finds out about that. If that, and then I make a picture about myself, that is subjective, isn't it? It's full of notions, and it's memory. So I'm not thinking about my life, I'm thinking about thoughts that I'm having about my life. And then if I think about the future, and I put my hope in it, that's becoming. One day I'm going to be this lovely, spiritual, blissed out person who's just going to be full of happiness. Well, whoop-de-dee-doo-dee-dum. That's not going to happen either, because again, that is a picture, an idea that I'm going to try to become. So the whole point with this is that it helps to realize, okay, my task is to find objectivity right now, right where I am, as I am. That helps a great deal. It takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? I mean, I only have to deal with this moment, this moment. So if I notice that I am upset, in friction, uptight, or whatever, under the light of Vedanta, and Vedanta is a wisdom, it's a light that you can look at yourself, and this light says to you, Bede, at the moment, even though you're a little bit cranky with that person, that crankiness is evidence of the fact that you're enclosed in subjectivity. You're under the sway of samsaric existence. What do you mean I'm under the sway of samsaric existence? What about that person? They're the one that's upset me. And then the slight goes, no, Bede, it is not them. Basically, the suffering belongs to you. It is right there as you. You have become the suffering. You're kidding me. Yes, because this light doesn't accuse us, you see. So, and this wisdom enables us to actually shift our attention to where the problem is. And the problem is right now, right where I am, as I am. And this is the only place and the only time that I can resolve this problem. And as we go on, we're going to discuss more about this type of thing. But all I wanted to do today is it clear now when I say that I want to feel good about myself, that wanting to feel good about myself, which is the popular cultural solution, is a dead end. It is a false promise. It is born, it's actually the suffering in another form, because it's born out of the suffering, as well as our attraction for it. That's born out of the suffering. So which basically means our daily life in samsara is born out of suffering. Is that clearer?
Very clear. Yes.
Now this...
No, it's like when you think deeply, reflect on what you said about feeling, you want to feel good about yourself. So that shows that you're dissatisfied. You feel inadequate, and you want to get out of this, but you're still unable to do it because you have a lot of subjectivity in you. That's what I gathered from what you said.
That's right.
So the whole idea is to to be as you are, where you are, and where you are. So that
the whole idea is that the light of Vedanta has to be brought to right now, right where we are, as we are, because we're not. Our whole problem, practically speaking, is when we're not being ourselves. We don't know what being ourselves means. Even though being ourselves, we can't help but be ourselves. We're always having, formally speaking, we're having an experience of being ourselves that isn't true, that we take to be ourselves. But fundamentally, if I know what it is to be myself, and am being myself, which I always am anyway, but that is the solution. But we think it's feeling good about myself, an idea over here. Whereas what's important to understand is that this whole samsaric trap is that all our efforts are misdirected. They're directed to where we can't possibly resolve the problem. It doesn't matter how much love and affection that we get or approval. It doesn't matter how many material possessions we get. It doesn't matter how much significance or pain we get. It will not address this fundamental problem that is centered on me. And when I know that, then I will be, once I know the location of the problem, I can say, right, this is my baby. And the thing is, I'm getting revelations of this pain every day. Every time I feel a little bit irritated, every time I feel bored, every time I feel this, I feel that. Every time of that is a revelation of the samsaric condition. So is every time I feel arrogant and feel superior and so full of myself. The ego inflation, ego deflation. Our whole psychological life is ego deflation, ego inflation. Ego deflation, trying to become inflated. Inflated, then getting beaten down again, back. They're back and forth. That whole process of becoming is really not the solution. What is the solution is the discovery, the knowledge of what it means to be myself. And the first step with that is the knowledge of what it means to be objective. And the interesting thing about this, Smita, is that unless we understand life in a certain way, unless we have an understanding of the whole, and how we're related to the whole, it is absolutely not possible to be objective as a way of life. So we'll be going into that next time. Okay?
Thank you. Very nice. It was a lovely chat and very inspiring, and hope to catch up next time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.